Hi everyone, it is currently the 7th of May 2015. Thanks again for clicking on this YouTube video talking about Typhoon Noul. Also, I have listed here our latest tropical depression, likely going to be upgraded to a tropical storm soon, so I've already labeled it here as Dolphin. So yeah, today is going to be another one of these kind of a long updates. I do want to thank everybody who watched my early morning update I did on here. I did it without the chroma key because I was just absolutely tired. That was around 4 a.m. Thanks also for watching on NHK World. This is more of a in-depth analysis. I'm not really just going to fly through this, but actually talk about why the weather is going to be happening out here. So it might take upwards about 10 minutes, but let's really get into this and talk about our storm system for now. First, take a look at the satellite imagery across the Western Pacific, and what we have is our tropical system continuing to spin out here, but the big thing with it, it is becoming much more organized. It still has all that moisture flowing in from the intertropical convergence zone, but the big thing we are seeing here today is that symmetry which has been setting up, and that is allowing the storm system really intensify. You just have good outflow aloft here towards the north, that moisture coming in, and sea surface temperatures under the storm system pretty warm, actually upwards about 30 to 32 degrees Celsius. That's just bath water, and if you're unfamiliar, anything over about 28 to 29 is conducive for tropical systems, but the higher you go with that number, the stronger it could be. Also, way over there towards the east, that big blob of convection, that is what is developing into Dolphin. Right now, it's way out there. If you're in the Philippines, even Guam, don't really worry about it immediately. But it's a lot of islands out here still going to be impacted, specifically Pohnpei really going to take in the brunt of that storm system. Let's take a look at the visible satellite imagery of our strong typhoon. Now, no, that is what the Japan Meteorological Agency is calling this, a strong typhoon. Big thing is the eye cleared out today. Take a look at that on the visible satellite imagery. That center of circulation becoming much more apparent. The eye wall definitely setting up, and based on Dvorak analysis, according to the Japan Meteorological Agency, 80 gusting to 115 knots, pressure down to 955 HPA. Do you want to note JTWC has winds a little bit higher than JMA, but that is typical when you're talking about the difference between a 10-minute wind scale, which JMA uses, and JTWC, which uses a 1-minute wind scale. So you might see some of the agencies a little bit different, but these are some of the things you want to take into account. Other thing here is this is moving towards the west-northwest at about 20 kilometers per hour, so starting to pick up the pace. That's going to play a key factor in the impacts on Japan. I'll get to that in a second. Excuse me, not Japan, the Philippines. That'll be playing a key factor when this does start to approach the coastline. Now, let's take a look at the morphed microwave imagery. I love this image. Why? It really shows the core center of the circulation around this storm. Here you have Yap. There it's just moving north of Yap, or actually that's Palau, excuse me. Moving north of Palau throughout the day today. You didn't really see a direct impact from this. Some of the outer rain bands pushed by, but the worst of the storms off here towards the north. Now, the key thing is, though, you notice in the last several frames, that eye really tightens up. Let's go through it one more time here. You can see that. And it's that inner eye wall. That's where those winds are that are upwards of about 85 to 100 knots, gusting over 100 knots. It's fairly concentrated, and let's hope it stays that way. The wind field doesn't really expand on this. Unfortunately, we do expect this to grow in intensity as it intensifies because of just the overall increasing of the organization of this storm. But at least for now, we are seeing a concentration in that eye wall. We're going to keep posted on that morph microwave imagery because that's going to become a lot more important as it starts to near the coastline of the Philippines here. Now, as we go ahead, the max intensity of this storm system, according to the Japan Meteorological Agency, is expected here at 0906 Universal Standard Time. So we're talking about basically the afternoon hours on Saturday as this starts to approach southeastern portions of Luzon, just off the coastline here. This will be intensifying to its max intensity. The Joint Typhoon Warning Center even has it peaking right about there as well. Actually, they're expecting a fairly strong storm system. Sustained winds around 120 to 125 knots. That's enough to sufficiently, 115 knots, a little bit high there. That's still enough to sufficiently cause some damage if you are directly impacted by those winds. And what I mean by damage, especially light roofing, tin roofs, those could blow off. Anything light objects that are unsecure. Those can definitely fly around. And that's one of the big things with wind. It's people don't get blown over and hurt because of high winds. They do, but the more common problem is flying debris that people could have easily secured. So if you are out here along the eastern seaboards, I think at this time, the big thing is you want to just do those little preparations. Prepare for the increase in the winds out here. This is the other big thing. And I mentioned earlier, it's picking up the pace. Because when you're talking about storm surge, wave threat, and also rainfall threat, the forward motion of the storm system actually plays a pretty big role. Now, another big issue is the size of the storm and the overall intensity. We're expecting this to get up to about that very strong typhoon intensity, enough to cause some damage. But it also is going to be moving at a pretty decent pace as it starts to push the coastline. And that means anybody north of that center of circulation, when this comes on shore, is looking at that threat of storm surge. Now, JMA actually poses a little bit farther towards the west, around Cassie-Gordon. I'm going to get to the models because some of the models are even shifting it out there towards the west, making landfall there across eastern portions of Luzon and eventually pushing over Manila. Right now, there's a lot of different things taking place here. So there is that threat up and down the coastal areas, even all the way up there towards Cagayan around Apari. I would not look at this track right now and think you're out of the woods. Nor would I think, oh goodness, this is coming towards me if I am in Casigueron. Now, if you are here, of course, be ready, but there is still the risk of this to change. The big thing is that we always talk about that cone of air out across this area that could potentially basically have the storm system waver from west to east. So why is it wavering? That's the other big thing. Remember, I mentioned I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on out here. Now, you have the subtropical ridge we often talk about, and basically this is running along the southern periphery of it. I've been talking about that over and over again. Now, the big thing here, though, as we're looking at our storm system come up, we have our subtropical ridge. This is actually the start of the rainy season front, believe it or not, there in southeastern China. We've been seeing flooding off there towards areas just north of Hong Kong, even some thunderstorms flaring up over there towards Okinawa. I'm going to get to that in a second, but this rainy season front is going to be a lifesaver for those of you in Okinawa, because if this really develops and stays in place, this acts as a wall. It is just basically holding an abundance of vertical wind shear. And what I mean by that, the winds in the upper atmosphere are a lot stronger than the lower atmosphere. It's the jet stream. Tropical systems hate this. Let's look at the upper level winds right here. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. Look at the jet stream off here. We have our ridge coming in. This is what I'm talking about, the little high that's pushing down. Then we have that dipping in. Now, that little dip there, that could play a pretty significant role in pulling our storm system up. And the ECMWF model kind of picking up on that. But most of the other numerical guidance expects this to stay strong enough where this kind of pushes it on shore. I'm stressing this because this is a pretty big difference here of what the ECMWF is showing, vice what some of the agencies and our good friends at the GFS are also showing, the numerican model there. This one kind of has our storm coming up and just clipping the coast of Apari. This would be fantastic news, but I don't think this is going to follow through. And that's why we look at several models and don't just rely specifically on one. There's the NSEP, the GFS guidance, coming over central portions of Luzon, basically insisting that subtropical ridge is going to stay in place. I think that's going to happen, and that's why JTWC and JMA both are reflecting that. Actually, we can go ahead and I'll just show you what the JTWC track is here compared to this one model. A little bit farther down towards the south, right? All right, so let's actually look at that model, the ECMWF forecast. Just pulling it off there toward the north, skimming along the coastline. But the big thing is the ensemble. Remember, these models, they put out about 50 outputs each run every 6 hours, or the ECMWF is every 12 hours, and then it averages it right in the middle. Some of it still pulls on off there towards the west. A few outliers are out there in the middle of nowhere. And also, by the way, this is Dolphin, a little bit farther there towards the east. Let's talk about that one as well here in a second. But the key thing I want you to take out from our storm system here, that is our, well, basically Noul, it's coming, guys, and it is going to bring some widespread rain showers. Heavy rainfall is going to be a pretty significant threat out here. We're going to be looking at the threat of flooding, also landslides, especially in the mountainous terrain along the eastern seaboards as this does continue to push off here towards the west, especially in some of these low-lying valleys. Flooding could be an issue. If that track shifts a little bit farther towards the south, Manila, you could be seeing some high winds as well. So if you're in Manila, don't start panicking at this point. But this is really one of those times where, yeah, you want to look closely at this. And you want to think, you know, if that track officially does shift a little farther towards the south, Pagasa, by the way, doesn't even have it approaching the coastline yet. They're just a little bit behind in the forecast here. But Manila, maybe then you might want to start making some preparations. But I definitely think people out here towards the east and basically up and down the coastline, you want to be watching this fairly closely here. Let's pull back the picture. Shift a little bit back towards the east here. Look at this. Our latest storm system. This is developing Dolphin. There's the track for it coming off here towards the west. Good news, staying north of our friends there in Chuuk, because you remember Chuuk took the brunt of Mysok. 9 casualties reported on the island there. And this is going to stay north of there, hopefully. Maybe some outer rain bands. But it does look like the Joint Typhoon Warning Center does expect this to continue to intensify upwards about 90 to 95 knots. But some of the numerical guidance even is much stronger than that. Some of it much weaker than that. So they're kind of right in the middle here. And the storm is still in its genesis phase. And a lot of time to still watch it. But a big thing is if you are in Pohnpei, one of the smaller islands off here towards the east, you're not out of the woods with this. You're going to be impacted somewhat from this storm system. So there's a lot of time to watch this one. It's way out there. And even behind that, there's another storm system that could be coming. It is May. Typically, you get about 1 to 1.5 on average typhoons, or excuse me, named tropical systems in the month of May. We have one, another one on the way, maybe 3. That would make it upwards of 8 storm systems, named storms, thus far this year. We're not even technically into the start of typhoon season. It's the Western Pacific. You always have season, but most of the time people say June or later. Not the case out here. 6 already. All right, guys, that is all for now. Thanks again for watching here at westernpacificweather.com. And as always, stay safe out there. All right.